Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about arrays. And you've seen arrays a few times already. Here is an array. In Ruby, you signify them by using this opening square bracket to open it and then the closing square bracket to close it. So whatever you put inside is an array. So an array is an ordered list of items, right? And each individual element or item within an array can be anything. It can be number, string, another array. It can be hash. It can be objects. It could be programs. It could be anything. And then the other thing is that it maintains an index. So as we saw, the element 1 here is at index 0. Element 2 here is at index 1. 3 is at index 2. 4 is at index 3. So it starts with the index at 0 and continues onwards, right? So arrays, you're going to come across a lot because it's a very neat and clean data structure. And Ruby has some powerful iterators and methods that you can use on arrays to basically do a lot of things. And that's what we're going to check out in this video. So let's get started. I'm going to say A is this array. Now let's start off with printing this. So if I go puts A and then Ruby main.rb, you see it prints out all the elements of my array, and it's doing each item in a different line because puts is basically put string. It's calling put string on each element, and as it's iterating through, it's adding a new line after each element. So I can say print instead of puts, and let's see what that does. Check it out. Now I got my array as it is, but then this line showed up. So I can do print A and then a puts to put the new line in there. And if I do that, okay, so that's what we wanted. All right, another way, I can use P. So let's get rid of this. I can see PA. All right. So that accomplishes the same thing that we wanted. All right. Now, what if we wanted to access an individual item within this array? Let's say I want to access the last element in the array. For that, I can run the last method. So a.last. If I do this, you see it gives me 9. So initially, I wanted to show you how to do this from the file and then run the file to get an output, but a faster way, because I have a decent number of methods I want to cover with arrays, a faster way to do this would be to show you in the terminal. So I'm going to have the terminal here, and I want to show you some array methods here. So I have IRB open. Let's quickly create an array. I can do that by specifying a range. And in Ruby, you create a range by using these two dots in between. So if I want to create a range from 1 to 100, I can say 1.100. Okay, let's use X to refer to this. All right, now what is X? It's just the range. Now if I do X.class, you see it says range. If I do X.2a, check it out. I have an array of 100 numbers from 1 to 100. I can do the same thing and then do shuffle. So I've done a couple of things there. I've chained one method to another. So it basically took my range, it turned it to an array, and then it ran the shuffle method on it. So that was a few things we did. So that resulted in 100 numbers getting created and then just shuffled randomly. All right. But if I refer to X, now you see it's still my range 1 to 100. What if I do this and then bang, shuffle bang? Then what happens? If I do X, you see X is still my range. So my range remains. Shuffle bang is supposed to mutate the caller, but the mutating of the caller is happening to the array. That's something important to keep in mind. So what I can do, if I wanted to keep this ordering, is I can say Z equals X.2a.shuffle bang. Now if I do Z, check it out. I have my order maintained, all right? So that's one thing to keep in mind about what the bang does versus it doesn't. For example, I'm going to do Control L to go to the top. Remember our reverse method. If I do x equals 1 dot 10 dot 2a. Oh, whoops, I made a mistake here. If I do this, then I have to put this within parentheses. It's trying to run this 2a on my 10. So, all right, there you go. So x is this array of my 10 numbers. Now, if I run x.reverse, you see it reverses it, but if I do x again, you see that it gives me my original value of 1 to 10. It doesn't give me my reversed value. How do you get this reversed value for x? Meaning you want to mutate the caller. To mutate x, we need to do reverse and then bang. Okay, so reverse bang actually mutates the caller. Now if I do x, you see that it's reversed. All right, so that's important to keep in mind. In Ruby, you'll see the bang will actually be mutating the caller in a lot of cases. All right, Control L to go to the top. Now let's look at something that's a little interesting. You saw that I was able to create a range of 1 to 100, 1 to 10, or whatever. I can also do this. I can do a dot dot and then z, right? So if I do x equals a to z, you see x is this range. Now if I do x dot to a, check it out. I have an array with the letters from a to z. Okay, so that's an interesting way of creating an array or a range of letters. Now, what if you wanted to shuffle it? Same thing, dot shuffle. So then you get a jumbled mix of letters of the alphabet, all right? Now I can also run some other methods on it. Let's say I want to know the length of my array, x.length. Oh, whoops, I ran it on my range. All right, so I have to do y equals x dot 2a dot shuffle. All right, let's run y dot length 26. So 26 letters in the English alphabet from A to Z. All right, now what is my A array? I don't have it, so let me grab it from here so I don't have to create this again. Okay, Control L. Let's paste this. Okay, so A dot length. What if I wanted to add an item to the end of the array? Let's say I want to add a 10. Then I can do this. I can do A and then use this shovel operator. It's basically 2 left arrows, and then you give it the element you want to add. So now you see A has 10. I can also run this. A dot last gives me the last element. I can do A dot first, gives me the first element. What if I wanted to add an item to the first element of the array? I can do A dot unshift, and then I can say Mashur. Let's say I want to add Mashur to the array. Now you see that my array A has Mashur as the first element. I can also add Mashur as the last element of the array. How do I do that? Now you saw already that I can use the shovel operator to add an element to the array, and that added it to the last element. What if I use this method? I can do A, append, and then the same thing, Mashur. You see I can use append to append an item to the last element of the array as well. But now you see I have 2 Mashurs in here, right? What if I wanted to get rid of one of them? What if I wanted to get rid of my duplicates? I can do a.unique, right? But remember, this doesn't have that exclamation mark. So perhaps this didn't mutate my caller. So if I do A, yep, just as we thought. So we can do exclamation mark. Now if we do A, check it out. My duplicate has been removed. So unique is one way of stripping duplicates from arrays. All right. I think we've already covered this one somewhere before, but I can also do this. See, a.empty, false, because A is obviously not empty. If I do B equals an empty array and then B.empty, that's true, okay? So you can test for a condition of an array being empty or not. You can see if any list is basically empty or something started. If you have any posts, etc., you can use empty to test for it. Now, what if I wanted to see if Masroor is included in my array? I can do this, a.include ? And then the item I want to test for. So Masroor, true. A.include, let's say my last name, false. So you can imagine you can simply use the include method to see if you have a huge array of items, if an item is included in it. Now there are two methods that are pretty common to use when you're dealing with basically structures such as stacks and queues. So the standard methods available are push and pop, and they're available here also. For example, if I do a.push new item, check it out, new item has been added to my array. That's what the push method does. But what if I wanted to remove this item, but not just remove it, but also return it, meaning I want to use that item for something. So that's basically LIFO behavior, which is last in but first out. So I can do that using pop. For example, I can say actually I want to store this item, so I can show you that it's being returned. I can do b equals a.pop. See, it returns the last item. But now if you look at A, you see that the last item is gone from A, okay? And B has it. So that's a good way of removing the item from a data structure such as an array. If you use pop, it'll basically get rid of it. So last in, because it was the last item that was put into the array, and then the first out. An alternative to this is FIFO, not LIFO, and FIFO is first in, first out, and that would have resulted in Masroor being removed, but we're not going to go into that. So moving up here, let's look at a few more fun things we can do with arrays. Fun but useful at the same time. For example, I have my A array. What if I did a.join? Check it out. What it does is it takes all the elements of your array and it turns it into a string, adds each element and returns it for you. This is not really useful, right? What if I wanted them returned to me but with a dash in between each item? I can then do this. Within parentheses, I can specify this. Check it out. I can also then do comma space. It's a string with a comma and then the numbers. So that's useful. What if I do what I did before, a.join, and then save it to b. So b equals a.join. B is that, right? What if I did b.split? b.split basically takes this item and puts it into an array. But that's not really useful to me. What if I want each item to be split by something? Then I can specify it. I can say what I want to split by. So there you go. So it basically looks for each of these hyphens or dash, and then it splits each item, turns them into an element in the array, and goes through the array and does it for the whole array. And this is very useful when you're trying to take a string, let's say a large string, and let's say it's comma separated, right? It's comma separated like this, but it's a string. You can take that and you can split it based on the comma and the space, and then turn it into an array. So a lot of data is passed through the web in JSON files, which contain large strings, and you can then split it using this. Another way of creating an array pretty fast. Let's say you want to work with an array, but you don't really have the time to do this, or, type out a equals blah, blah, blah. Let's say an array of strings and random words in there. I can do something like this. I can do W and then %, and then within parentheses, I'll just say, my name is Masroor and this is great. Ruby is amazing. Okay. Within parentheses, if I hit enter, okay, we have a problem. Said W, undefined local variable or method. Oh, whoops. syntax error over here. It's not W percentage, it's percentage W. So if I go here, I have to do percentage W, and then check it out. It basically takes whatever I've written and it turns it into an array, each element into an array. How cool is that? So if you want to work with something really fast, this is a good way of getting an array going full of strings. I can then say z equals, and then this is also an interesting trick you can use. If I don't want to type the whole thing out that I did above, the expression, I can do underscore, and basically it grabs the last expression. So if I do z equals, see, it basically takes this expression and it applies it. So now if I do z, z is that. Now, one thing I want to introduce you to very briefly are what's called iterators. So let's say I have z. What if I wanted to go through each item in my list? So z0, then z, let's say 1. So each element in my array, if I want to go through them, if I want to loop through it and do something to them, let's say print it out, what you would do is you would use what's called an iterator. You can use a for loop, but in Ruby, the preferred way to iterate through data structures, objects, anything is the .each operator. So it's z.each. In traditional programming, you would do something like this. For items in z, and items could be anything, right? You can even say I. For I in z, which starts my block, I can say print z and then put an end to end the block. You have to specify this. What I did here is basically for each item in z. So first it went to the first element, my, in the first iteration. Then it printed out the entire array. So you have an array, the entire array for my. Then it went to the second element, name, and it printed out the entire array again. Then it went to the third element, is, it printed out the entire array again. So it kept printing it out. So you can do the same thing, right? For I in z, instead of printing out the whole array, you can print out the element itself. You can say print I, because that is the one that contains the element. Print I, end. You see, it prints each element in the array one after the other. Obviously, this is happening in one shot because I use print. I can then do something like this. Print I plus space and then end. Check it out. You get a space in between. Now, the Ruby preferred way of doing this is the .each method. So z, there's my array. I can do z.each do, that's the beginning of the block, and I have to specify the element, whatever I want to call it. So as it goes through each element, I need to give it a name. So let's call it food, right? So z.each do food, and I'm choosing something completely random here or irrelevant, just so you know that you can name it whatever as long as you're consistent in how you use that name within it. So z.each do food starts the block for me, and then I can say print food plus space, right? And then end. Check it out. It does exactly what we did before, but using the .each method. Now this thing, it's a simple block, right? It's a one expression block. Whenever you have an expression like this, the Ruby preferred way is not to do it in multiple lines. The Ruby preferred way is to do it in the same line. So z.each, and then you give it a block within the curly braces. All right, so open curly brace, and then close curly brace, and within it, you can do the same thing. You can say within pipes, food, and then print food plus space, right? Empty space. And this way, you don't need to provide the do or the end. It's all in one line. Does the same thing. My name is Mashur, and this is great. Ruby is amazing. All right. So you can see that it's pretty concise, and it reads like English. At this point, it may look confusing, but believe me, this type of syntax in blocks, you're going to be using it a lot the more you use Ruby. Okay. Now this is a very brief introduction to iterators, so I'm not going to go too much in depth, but there are lots of things you can do with this. You can even say, you see how I'm grabbing each element from my array? I can run the capitalize method on it. So food dot capitalize plus space. And then you see each letter of each element is capitalized, right? So you can see how powerful this can be. You can manipulate items as you need. Now we've covered a lot in this video. I'll just keep you for a little bit more and cover this one last item. There is the dot each. Another one you'll see quite a lot in Ruby is the select. Z.select, let's say. And the select operator, it works on Booleans. So the condition it's testing for is Boolean. So let's create an array. Let's say z equals 1 to 100. And of course I have to use parentheses. We ran into that error once. Dot to a dot shuffle. So I have this random ordering of 100 numbers. And what if I wanted to print just the odd numbers? Then I can do z.select and then number if number.odd. Okay? Check it out. In my random ordering of the array, it would have been very difficult for me to basically go in and select the odd numbers out. But with this, look at how easily this was done. Basically, it looped through the array, and for each item that it went through, it tested for this condition, if the number was odd. And if it was, it returned it in my array. So you get an array full of all the odd numbers. So you can see the select can be pretty useful. All right, so that's a lot we've covered in this video. I'm going to exit out of my terminal. And I would really encourage you to go through this video again, because arrays can be pretty daunting to get started with because there's just so much available and so many things you can do with it. And I would ask you to practice, see if you can create a deck of 52 cards, for example, or just random things and write a program. Why not? Write a program to play with it, to play with arrays, ordering, and using multiple methods on arrays. And remember, you can always do something like this. You can take the array and you can say a dot methods. And let's see, clear this up. Ruby main.rb. Check out all these methods that are available out of the box for arrays, right? So take a look at some of these, try them out, see what they do, just for practice. And that's all I'm going to cover in this video. Hope you enjoyed it. And in the next video, we're going to take a look at dictionaries, which are also known as hash. So I'll see you there.